Good morning. Good morning to you all, or whatever time it is that you're watching this. But it's morning for me. Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Woohoo! And we are live. Good to see you today. And thank you for taking time out of your day and your week to watch this video and to listen to me read from the Bible. I'm Brian. I'm the pastor at Christ United Methodist Church here in Waynesboro, PA. And we are making our way through the book of Acts. This is day 22. We're reading a chapter a day, so we are on chapter 22. See how easy that was. After today, there's only 6 more to go because there's 28 chapters in the book of Acts. I pray that you have found these days and this time to have been worthwhile over these past weeks of listening. Hope you've learned something. Hope you've been blessed by the readings in some way. We are nearing the end of this one. Then I'm probably going to take a break and figure out what we'll do next. But we'll be back with something after we're done with this one. Someone said you should do the whole Bible this way. I said I do want to retire at some point. I don't think I could read the the whole Bible a chapter a day before I retire. Uh, Ronald is on with us, and Ronald says, "Morning," and oh, you look much better today. Well, thank you, Ron. I am feeling better today. Uh, I guess it was pretty obvious yesterday that I still was not well. Um, I've been just very drained of energy, I guess you might say too. But yeah, I am feeling better today. Good morning, Marcia. Good morning, Cheryl. Thank you for doing that, folks. I like to know that you're there. I know I still am just talking to myself, but it makes me feel a little bit better as far as knowing that somebody is there. So say hello, say good morning, say something to me and to each other. Greet each other as you're doing it. Hello, Marine from down south, um, and to the rest of the family down there too. Hello. So yeah, today is day 22 of our work of our walk through the book of Acts. So we are going to get right to that. We're going to get right to that. I am going to read the last like verse and a half of chapter 21, just to remind you from yesterday's reading, or if you didn't happen to have the chance to watch yesterday's, to just uh, place the context and set us where we're going. And I'm actually going to stop. Um, I'm not going to read the last verse of chapter 22 today. I think it goes better with chapter 23. Um, I just think if I broke up the chapters, if I was in charge of dividing up the chapters, I'd have broken them up differently in several different cases, and this is one of them. We in in chapter 22, what I think would really be the beginning of 23. It'll make sense when we get to it tomorrow. Oh, good morning, Cindy, and I sound a little bit better today too. Good to hear. Good to hear. Good morning, Joe. Good to have you with us as well this morning. Um, so thank you, folks, and thank you for your concern. I've gotten numerous texts and messages here on Facebook, and I know I've heard about prayers and stuff like that, and I'm touched, and I thank you for it. I can feel it. I could feel it. Okay, so chapter 22, like I said, I'm going to pick up a verse and a half before. This is Paul talking to the commander who has him under arrest. He says, "Please let me talk to these people." Remember, big riot kind of thing going on. The commander agreed. So Paul stood on the stairs and motioned to the people to be quiet. Soon a deep silence enveloped the crowd, and he addressed them in their own language, Aramaic. "Brothers and esteemed fathers," Paul said, "listen to me as I offer my defense." When they heard him speaking in their own language, the silence was even greater. So it was even greater than a deep silence. Luke is pretty poetic sometimes. Then Paul said, "I am a Jew, born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, and I was brought up and educated here in Jerusalem under Gamaliel. You remember him, right? He was from early on. He was the one that spoke at the Sanhedrin uh, that ended up kind of protecting John, Peter and John, saying that if God is behind this, we're not going to be able to stop it no matter what anyway. Okay, back in like chapter 3 or something like that. Anyway, that was just an aside. As his student, I was carefully trained in our Jewish laws and customs. I became very zealous to honor God in everything I did, just like all of you today. And I persecuted the followers of the way, hounding some to death, arresting both men and women, and throwing them into prison. The high priest and the whole council of elders can testify that this is so. For I received letters from them to our Jewish brothers in Damascus, authorizing me to bring the followers of the way from there to Jerusalem in chains to be punished. Pause. So Paul, Paul says this is his defense because the charges that they were leveling against him was kind of saying that he wasn't Jewish enough, that he wasn't following the rules anymore, the laws of Moses, and that he was preaching to the Gentiles, telling them to not obey any of those rules, to just uh, to not obey those rules, to ignore the law of Moses. So to start his defense, he's showing what kind of Jew he was. And he's starting things off by showing them, hey, I am Jewish. Here was where I am. This is where I was born. These are the things I did. I studied under Gamaliel. Come on, guys, you remember him. Is an important figure in Judaism, right? Uh, so he's saying, you can't get a whole lot more Jewish. And remember how I attacked followers of the way? Okay. So he's setting up the base part of his defense. I am Jewish. So continuing. As I was on the road, approaching Damascus about noon, a very bright light from heaven suddenly shone down around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Who are you, Lord? I asked. And the voice replied, I am Jesus the Nazarene, the one you are persecuting. The people with me saw the light, but didn't understand the voice speaking to me. I asked, What should I do, Lord? And the Lord told me, Get up and go into Damascus, and there you will be told everything you are to do. I was blinded by the intense light and had to be led by the hand to Damascus by my companions. A man named Ananias lived there. He was a godly man, deeply devoted to the law, and well regarded by all the Jews of Damascus. He came and stood beside me and said, Brother Saul, regain your sight. And at that very moment, I could see him. Pause. So, after setting the stage and saying, this is how Jewish I am, Paul then goes into the narrative, retelling the story of his of his conversion, yes, of his conversion, of his experience with the living Christ, the risen Christ. So this is the second time we're hearing this story. The first time since it happened, and Paul's telling it. So yeah, there are a few details that are different. Luke changes some things just uh, for the import of the context and who is hearing this story and who is hearing the story. There's probably not quite as much detail in this one as there was in the original telling of the story, and that's okay. Um, I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time picking out all the differences. Knowing that they're there and knowing kind of why is good. That's good enough. Okay. So now we're going to hear. Paul's going to continue and tell, at least in perhaps in different words, what his mission is. Because if you had seen the earlier video, and if not, that's okay. Um, ooh, itchy nose. We concentrate on the conversion of Paul. We concentrate on his conversion as a conversion story, which is true and is important. But if we when we do that, sometimes we miss the point of the call, and the call is the more important part of the story. Yes, Paul was converted, experienced this conversion, which was wonderful and great, but his calling is even more important. His calling is even more important. So he's told the conversion part. Now he's going to get to the call part. And which part is it that gets him in trouble? Then he told me, the God of our ancestors has chosen you to know his will and to see the righteous one and hear him speak. For you are to be his witness, telling everyone what you have seen and heard. What are you waiting for? Get up and be baptized. Have your sins washed away by calling on the name of the Lord. After I returned to Jerusalem, I was praying in the temple and fell into a trance. This is the first time we've heard about this, right? I saw a vision of Jesus saying to me, hurry, leave Jerusalem, for the people here won't accept your testimony about me. But Lord, I argued, they certainly know that in every synagogue I imprisoned and beat those who believed in you. And I was in complete agreement when your witness Stephen was killed. I stood by and kept the coats they took off when they stoned him. But the Lord said to me, go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles. Pause. Even though there's only 2 verses left, or not a little bit more than that. So he told the conversion story, the conversion half of the story, and he told the calling part of the story, which is the more important part, his calling to preach to the Gentiles in particular. And this does match up with earlier with Luke. Remember, by that time, um, the conversion of Israel in Jerusalem had kind of ended, and it started to spread elsewhere. And so Paul was going to be the one that was going to take it even farther, even beyond that. So that's the message that he's telling in his defense. And which part is it that gets Paul in trouble with this crowd this time, right? So continuing, the crowd listened until Paul said that word, Gentiles. Then they all began to shout, away with such a fellow! He isn't fit to live. They yelled, threw off their coats, and tossed handfuls of dust into the air. But which is a sign of anger, repentance, sorrow, whatever you want to say at that point. Not so much repentance, but sorrow. So continuing, the commander brought Paul inside and ordered him lashed with whips to make him confess his crime. He may not be guilty, but he'll confess to a crime anyway if we're going to whip him. He wanted to find out why the crowd had become so furious. Remember, Paul had spoken in Aramaic, so we can presume that this commander didn't understand it, or at least not completely. When they tied Paul down to lash him, Paul said to the officer standing there, is it legal for you to whip a Roman citizen who hasn't even been tried? When so remember from a few chapters ago, whatever it was, Paul had mentioned that he was a Roman citizen, and it got him out of trouble. They didn't no, they were going to release him anyway, and he was said, "Are you going to just do this to a Roman citizen and then try to release me privately?" And he did everything publicly until now, and people got worried because he was a Roman citizen, and he could have complained about that, and those magistrates of that community would have been in trouble for doing it. This is the first time Paul has mentioned that he's a Roman citizen to this guy, because he just said he was a citizen of of Tarsus. Of Tarsus. He didn't mention that he was a Roman citizen of Tarsus. He just said he was a citizen of Tarsus. So now he's saying he's a Roman citizen. So continuing, when the officer heard this, he went to the commander and asked, "What are you doing? This man is a Roman citizen." So the commander went over and asked Paul, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" "Yes, I certainly am," Paul replied. "I am too," the commander muttered, "and it cost me plenty." Paul answered, "But I am a citizen by birth." Pause. So you could have become a Roman citizen either through birth or through purchasing your citizenship, and apparently it was expensive to purchase. Um, Paul says he was a citizen by birth. Now Luke doesn't go into details exactly how that happened, how that would have occurred, um, and I don't know. But apparently that's how it was. That's how it was. So the soldiers who were about to interrogate Paul quickly withdrew when they heard he was a Roman citizen, and the commander was frightened because he had ordered him bound and whipped. That's where I'm going to end today. We're going to save verse 30 to go with chapter 23. So they were all worried. They were all worried because there were certain things you could or could not do, more specifically, could not do to a Roman citizen. The Roman citizen had all of the freedoms, all of the privileges, all of the rights of citizenship, and all of the protections of citizenship. Other individuals did not. They were kind of like almost like non entities, non individuals. They didn't have the rights. So you could whip, beat, whatever, torture them, get them to confess to crimes that they didn't commit, should that be your desire. But if you tried to do some of those things to a Roman citizen, you would then be liable to judgment by under the law and probably receive even worse than you tried to give. Probably receive even worse than you tried to give. So, friends, yes, I realize it was, excuse me, kind of a short one today. It's only 17 and a half minutes. That was a shorter chapter, um, and I'm sure we'll make up for it as we go along over these last 6 days together. But that'll be it for today. So tomorrow, of course, is Sunday, and if you haven't yet joined us for our worship experience, I invite you to do so. And if you have joined us in the past, I invite you to join us again tomorrow, our online worship experience at 10:45, right here on Facebook Live. Thank you, Connie. Right here on Facebook Live, 10:45 tomorrow morning for our worship experience. And as I mentioned the other day, February 21st, we will be back to in-person worship um, with very serious, guidelines in place for social distancing and masking and non-congregating kind of thing. So, which we will be posting probably multiple times between now and February 21st, just so everybody has a chance to know what those are and what we're asking people to do. Um, February 21st, you might think that's a weird day to pick, but that's actually the first Sunday in Lent. The first Sunday in Lent. Um, Lent starts on Ash Wednesday, is that the 18th, 17th, whatever, 15th, something like that, somewhere in the middle. 18th, it's gone, whatever it is. 17th, 17th is Ash Wednesday. And so that's why we picked the 21st. Figure that's a good place to start the beginning of Lent, the first Sunday of Lent. Um, Last year we were only able to be gathered together for in-person worship for part of Lent. It was in the middle of Lent when we had to take a break. So we're going to start at the beginning of Lent back in person. And when that happens, if you haven't joined us for in person, please know that you're going to be welcome then, just like you are now here online. So anyway, folks, have a blessed day. I hope you've been touched by these words. I hope God has spoken to you in some way through my mouth. And look for the blessings all around you. Keep your spiritual eyes and ears open to God's action in your life and in the world around you. and then share that. Let me know. Let somebody else know. Let a whole bunch of other people know. Bye.